I'm going to start with there may be a way for us to go a little faster through this book, but this chapter is like the foundation chapter, and you need to understand these things. So I'm going to take it a little slower. Also, if you have a question or a comment, please jump right in. Because of the way I'm going to be moving around a little bit, I may not see you. So this chapter is called The Four Tendencies. Now, I'm going to keep saying this and repeating the fact that once you identify what tendency you are, you can't really change it. That's who you are, and it's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's just kind of who you are. But it's going to help you with your approach to, making changes in your life. It also, she talks a lot about getting to know who other people are. And when I was going through this, it's funny how you can almost pick out who you think who is what out of these four tendencies, because I mean, I was doing, oh, that's G. Oh, that's pastor. Just because it's just the way people seem to function. And this helps understand when you're working with someone who has a certain tendency, you know who you're working with. And it's good to have a blend of tendencies when you're working on anything. Now, we're all, human beings are all very similar to each other, but there are some very, very important differences that we have. And one of the things that we already talked about is that habit strategies don't work for everybody. Like when we did atomic habits, there were habit strategies. And, when we talked about those, we knew that, oh, that doesn't work for me, or that works really good for me. But I don't think we understood exactly why. This will help us understand how to understand who we are so we can better manage ourselves and to understand others that we work with. So it's important to know how your nature or how you approach things affects how you approach habits. So the most important question is to keep in mind when you're thinking about this is, how does a person respond to expectations? How do you respond to expectations? When you try to form a new habit, you set an expectation for yourself, right? And it's crucial to understand that once I set this, how am I going to respond to that expectation? And this is where the four tendencies come in. There's four distinct groups, and most people fall squarely in one, although there may be some overlap that we'll talk about where there's a couple of them where you can kind of have some other tendencies. So I'm going to share. All right, y'all see that? Now I can't see my notes. Okay, can y'all see that? So these are the four tendencies. And the first one, and it's all about expectations and how each tendency approaches expectations. So the first one we're going to talk about is the upholder. And as we're doing this, try to see which one you feel you most fall into. And if you want to talk about them or you want to ask questions, we'll kind of work through them. So the upholder is someone who responds very readily to both inner expectations and outer expectations. They wake up in the morning and they think, what's on the schedule or what's on my to-do list for today? They are very like, I have a to-do list, I have things to do. Other people really feel like they can rely on them. They're very self-directed. They have very little trouble meeting deadlines, commitments, because their whole goal is to understand what the rules are and how do I meet those rules, because the rules are the structure of my life. They have a strong instinct for self-preservation, and that protects them from other people's expectations. Okay? They may struggle in situations where expectations are not clear or the rules aren't established. So they're the kind of person that you say, just go over there and do whatever you want. They don't like that. They want to know what the rules are. What are my expectations? If you've ever worked with someone who has to have, like, what are my goals? How do you want me to accomplish this? Tell me every little thing. And then they go do that. They're great. But they can't function if you give them too much freedom. They are relentless when it comes to trying to get things done. And they find it easier to establish habits that are gratifying to them. But they still have issues just establishing new habits because there has to be kind of a rule. They have to have a why. Why am I doing this? What's the rule around it? What am I getting from it? And when I'm going to give you each category, and then we'll go back and review, give you some more in depth on each of them. Okay. Next one is the questioners. They question all expectations, and they'll meet expectations only if they believe that the answer is justified. So their only response to expectation, they only respond to expectations that make sense by reason, logic, and fairness. They wake up in the morning and they say, what needs to get done today? And the big question, why? Why does it need to get done? They need to decide if a course of action is a good idea and resist anything that doesn't seem to have a good sound purpose. What's my purpose for doing this? Their rules, they like rules that are based on morality, ethics, and reason. And that's very compelling for them. They are intellectually engaged and willing to do exhaustive research to decide that there's sufficient basis for them to succeed at an expectation. They resist anything that's arbitrary. They have an appetite for information, and justification can be overwhelming. They are the type of people who go into what's called analysis paralysis. If you've ever worked with someone who overanalyzes everything, look at Terrell's laughing. You know those people, and that they analyze and analyze, and they're like, and you're just like, just do it. But they got to analyze it. Some questioners have an inclination to be a little bit of an upholder, and they have some inclination. Some have an inclination to lean towards the rebel. Okay, just so. If a habit, when they're forming habits, if the habit is worthwhile, they'll stick to it. But if they don't see the usefulness and they can't justify it, they reject it. So that's the thing they run into when it comes to habit forming good habits. The next one is the obliger. They respond readily to outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. So they're totally motivated by external accountability. They wake up in the morning and think, what must I do today? They go to great lengths to meet responsibilities and demands that are external, okay? They rely on external cues and consequences like deadlines and late fees. And a big one is fear of letting other people down. They promises to themselves can be broken, but a promise to someone else cannot be broken. So they are very self-sacrificing. But they behavior that they identify as self-sacrificing is a way that they see is accountability, because they see that I'm being accountable because you're telling me I'm doing it correctly. So that external um, accountability is what they need. They're very good people who to be role models because they do things for the sake of others that they won't do for themselves. So they make great role models because they do things for the sake of others, and you can see like their motivation, and they're usually very positive people. They have a hard time saying no, and they find it difficult to form habits for their own benefit. It's easier if the habit is linked to the benefit or the accountability of others. So if it seems like there's some external person or entity that gives them that accountability or benefit, they're more likely to be able to change habits. The last one is rebels. Now, rebels like to resist all expectations, inner or outer. They don't care. They don't want to. They wake up in the morning and think, what do I want to do today? They work on their own goals in their own way, and they refuse to do what they are supposed to do. And supposed to do is like supposed to. So the expectation of what others would have of them is what they are supposed to do. They place a high value on authenticity and self determination. So these are the people that say, well, this is just me. And I'm going to, I'm going to do my own thing. They are actually very valuable to society because their best asset is to be the voice of dissent. When she talked about this, she talked about these are the kind of people who are very vocal about social justice, but they go about it in their own way and they're creative. They frustrate other people because they can't be asked or told to do anything. It's got to be their own idea or they don't really like it. So the trick with that is to ask the opposite of what you want, and they're more likely to do it. So if I said, you stay here and I'll go to the store. No, I'll go to the store. So it's kind of the opposite. To the rebel, audience equals expectations. So when there's an external that outer expectations, that's the audience. So when there's no audience, they do a whole lot better because they don't want to have any expectations put on them by anyone. They resist hierarchies and rules, and they work better when they're in charge. Now, it's not to say they don't like rules. They do. They just like the rules or the structure of what they're doing to be broad enough and non-specific enough so that their creativity can flow. They resist habits, but can embrace habits like behaviors when tying them to it being my choice and my benefit. Okay, I'm going to stop here for a second and I'm going to say questions, comments. Do you see yourself? Do you see people you work with?
I was going to say, I definitely see myself.
And where do you put yourself?
The obliger.
Uh-huh.
Because I get up every day thinking, what do I have to do today to make everybody else's life convenient and happy and joyous and and make everything work. I'm used to being the manager. I am used to making everything happen because I don't like to see people panic. Like I can panic on the inside, but I don't like to see other people panic because I feel like they don't handle it. In my mind, I feel like they don't handle it as well as I do, and that they freak out, and then there will be chaos. So I have to control it or manage it or make the magic happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see yourself did you see yourself a little bit in any of the other ones?
A little bit in the, honestly, a little bit in kind of a couple of them. I'm gonna say a little bit of a rebel because I will have those days where I'm like, I don't care what, I'm just gonna do what I want to do.
Mhm.
But overall, I know I'm an obliger.
Yeah,
Um,
and what happens is that there are some of these that, and that's why the circles overlap. Some of them, they will overlap.
mhm,
You do have a major tendency though.
yeah.
It's just that it, depending on who you're working with and what you're doing, you could find yourself with a little bit of those tendencies, and even who your life partner is can make a difference. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
So
But
can I ask you a question?
sure.
Do you think, well, maybe not. At first, I thought the overlapping circles were an indication because some of so, I have OCD. So the circles are not like perfectly
Don't,
aligned. Oh,
don't,
okay.
don't, because I nearly went berserk trying to make those circles. Can I
Oh,
just say?
that's you. Oh, I thought you got this from someone else. Okay.
No.
I thought this was okay. Because
And
at
my,
first I thought that no, the reason I asked that was because I thought that since the overlapping obliger circle, there's more overlap on the rebel portion of it than the
mhm,
upholder. And I thought maybe that was some kind of
no,
indicator, which because I related to that. So that's why I asked.
no, I had to create it
I got
myself,
you.
and the doggone circles and I were having
I
issues.
got you. I got you.
On a different day, I could have probably done really well, but the day I was
Now,
doing that,
believe me, you did much better than I could have.
I was having issues with that
Gotcha.
particular screen, just
Okay.
so you know.
You did a
Gotcha.
great job, Elder Cindy.
Right. Because I couldn't have done it.
Listen, I had to give up because I'm a little like you. I was getting a little OCD about it, and I just said, forget it. I'm just going to stop, save, and walk away. Just walk away.
Right. Walk away.
So, anyone else? Did you see yourself, or I thought about the obliger with our deacon Cheryl, and I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just saying when you think about a deacon has a tendency to be like an obliger because they really are that type of person. And if you relate it to a little bit to the ministry that some people do, um, and she mentions a little bit about different people in ministry, but just she skims. She did it so fast it was nothing. Um,
And the
but
perfect example of Deacon was last night when she said that she was concerned about Mickey for 2 days. I'm like, honey, you're going to have major surgery. This chick
see
is 20 years
because
old. She will be okay.
because it's all about those outer expectations and accountability to other people.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, when you look at this and you say, here's where I think I am, but the people that I am in contact with the most, where are they? And how do I interact with them? And how does that fit? You know, because you think, because I immediately thought I'm a questioner. And then I went, but I really think I'm a questioner because that was the most like who I am. Um, but there were times that I could see myself a little, like you said, a little bit of rebel, a little bit of upholder, but but I think some of what this gives you is if you know who you are and you can kind of identify the people you're in contact with, that gives you a little bit of information about how to approach them. Because like when our deacon gets so focused on those outer expectations and resists the inner, we have to kind of, and we do this for her. And I'm not talking out of turn. I'm not trying to pick on her. I'm just giving her, because we all use her as an example. She resists the inner, so we pull her back in and say, now look at your inner, look at, take care of yourself. Um, you were talking about yourself. That's the way you function, because you have to really, the accountability as a manager is that external. And you really, because when you were working, And we would have to say to you, gee, when's the last time you did something for yourself? When's the last time you had a day off? You know, it's that kind of thing. So
Absolutely.
that's how you can kind of use it to help track how the people in your life are doing as well, because you recognize where they fall.
So I have a
Anybody?
question. The
Sure.
this looking at this, so the questioner and the obliger don't look like they would work well together. Am I reading
Uh,
this right?
I think they,
Because
I
they're
think, I think they,
opposite.
well, uh, I,
Hey, I've been married to this
I,
man for 8 years. Are you kidding me?
What'd you
I
say?
think, I think that there may be times that they irk each other. I mean, I could see that. There are times that G will drive me up a wall, but I, you know what I'm saying? But I
Oh,
understand where he's coming
it didn't even
from.
occur to me that you guys that he's
Yeah,
the obliger and you're the and then he obligated. I was
questioner.
just
Exactly.
I'm the questioner, and there are times that I'm like, dude, you know, like
I mean, but that's Pastor and I's relationship. I mean, it's
right,
because
because
he
yeah, because we the questioner. Let's go back. We question everything, and it's not because we think it's wrong. It's we want the logic behind it. Why? And in fact, what I know about myself is when there's a crisis, I go into logic mode instead of feeling mode. And it makes people think, gosh, she really just doesn't get affected by things. And I do. I am seriously feeler, but that's how I make sense of things, because I have to like, okay, what do I have to get done? Why? How? Um, what's my course of action? What's how do I logically get to this? But if you think about it, what did I say? I'm going back and looking at, okay, some questioners have an inclination to be upholders, and the other ones have an inclination toward rebel.
okay.
Okay, so you can be one thing but have an inclination. Um, See, and like with us questioners, if the habit seems worthwhile, we'll stick to it. If it doesn't, you ain't doing it. Because I don't see the results. I don't see what's my benefit. You know, it's got to be logical. Obligers, they 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 do it for other people. Their accountability is in a different place, but it may be different when you're trying to form a habit. You might shift a little bit. Anyone else? And we're going to go more in depth about each of these. I just wanted to get you to know these four things, because these are really the framework of where we're going to go.
Cindy, the comment that you made about analysis paralysis, that really struck me because I'm very particular in making sure that I do things correctly. For example, I'm at work right now, and I'm doing some trying to get ready for a hearing on tomorrow, and I like to have all of my questions listed, and I like to know exactly what I'm going to say. So I'm that person, and it's similar to when we are painting. I want to make sure that it's done right, that everything is it looks good. When people walk in the room or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
then also in regard to you know kind of hurting people's feelings, other people's feelings in regard to the lady I used to go to the store for, and
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of hard to tell her no, and with the help of life class, I finally got up the courage to say, hey, this is too much. Let me. And as a matter of fact, I think there's probably been one time that she has asked me to do something for her. Sometimes I go down to her apartment to help her put up curtains and things like that. But in regard to going to the store, hardly at all. I don't think she's asked me one time since then. I don't know if she's mad at. I don't think she's mad, but I think she, just got the point. I was kind of tired of that. But so that's me. I kind of have a hard time telling people no. I'm not doing it anymore. That's, but
See, and I would say that you would be one of those people who who is a questioner obliger, because you really don't, you have to have things organized, but you're sensitive to more outer expectations and how other people are responding to you, even though you're questioning, if that makes sense. So they do overlap. See, like with that woman, you'd be more concerned about that, those external expectations, her expectations of you instead of your own expectations of yourself. Okay. Anybody else? Is this making sense? Yes, ma'am.
So I I see myself more as the obliger.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about that, I'm thinking about me in here in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's probably everywhere else too. I don't know, but here in the home, I know that I'm a servant.
Okay.
So when I wake up in the morning, I know I have to go to work. I have to sign on to go to work. But when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about uh, am I gonna, what I'm gonna do for mama? What am I gonna cook for dinner? For everybody. And I'm trying to, well, I want to make what everybody likes, so or something like that. So that's the biggest thing that's on my mind every morning when I wake up.
Yeah, and and none of these is bad. Don't hear that at all. It's not. It's just who you are. And
But
that's the thing. You're not expected to change any of that. That's just who you are. And so if you understand who you are, then when you approach to making changes in your life, you need to approach it in such a way that it's going to stick, because you need to approach it differently than I would.
I'd like to be the upholder when I grow up. I want to have my checklist and I want to get everything done. I do not want to procrastinate.
That one just seemed very rigid to me, but I was, but again, if you're looking at something that's not you, then that looks a little different.
Yeah.
So we'll go on. Most people are questioners or obligers, and our tendencies are hardwired. You can't change them. You can offset them. You can kind of, it can be a little bit situational. You can find yourself, like G said, be a little bit of a rebel now and again. But it's kind of hardwired. It's who you are. And that's why you need to understand this is not the good and the bad. It's the different. It's who you are. And you can counterbalance yourself into these other areas, but you could also counterbalance the negative aspects of whatever tendency is you. Okay. So knowing your tendency can help you frame your approach to habits. So let's say exercise is the habit you want to establish. If you are an upholder, then exercise would be on your list. That's how you would start to establish that in your life, because it's on the list. It's on the list. So it has to be done. The questioner would see the health benefits of exercise. Okay, what's in it for me? Logically. What am I going to get out of it? How does this work? So a questioner is going to exercise is going to be the health benefits or something like that. The obliger, their whole approach would be, I like to exercise when somebody's with me and they help keep me accountable. So exercise is a group project for them. They need that accountability with someone else. because if someone else is with them, they're not going to disappoint that other person. You know, people will say, well, I exercise only if I have somebody with me to keep me accountable. They keep you accountable, okay? The rebel, they just do it because it's a thing to do. Running is an independent way to get into shape, that I don't have to structure it by going to the gym or anything else. They're going to pick an exercise that is something that is independent, without expectations from anyone but themselves, and they're just going to do it their way, whatever that is. That's just how they'll approach, let's say, exercise. Okay, so knowing other people's tendencies that's equally as important, because that way, if you're leading them, like G was talking about, or you're trying to assist them, trying to help them through, let's say, a crisis or whatever, then you'll have a way to understand the way they're viewing, or their tendency to view life. So upholders, questioners, and rebels embrace their tendencies. They really embrace them. They say, this is who I am. This is how I approach things. Obligers are a little bit vexed with who they are because, and you've hinted at it, Mother Trout, and so has G, because you can meet somebody else's expectations, but you can't meet your own. And that's vexing. And so you struggle with that, because you're meeting that external expectation. But when you set expectations for yourself, you struggle with being that person who is always externally driven. And so turning that around is hard. Now, I thought this was interesting. They said, if a true rebel, is in a long-term relationship, it's with an obliger, and that they actually get along really well with each other, and they actually complement each other, because it's just, for them, the rebel, if they're willing to make that commitment, the true rebel, then the obliger is the perfect person for it. Because, I mean, they will respond to them the way they want to be responded to. Okay, so we all share a desire for autonomy. If the feeling of being controlled by others becomes too strong, it can trigger a phenomenon of reactance. And I'm going to spell that REACTANCE. So when you feel, and I think this is something that Mother Trout was alluding to, that actually, no, it's more like G's referring to, that if you feel like your life is being more controlled by others, if that feeling gets too strong, that everything you do is for someone else, then this reactance is a resistance to doing something that you are beginning to see as a threat to your freedom and your ability to choose. So if that structure becomes too difficult, then there's resistance. Now, this is not just something obligers do, this is everybody. If any of these four tendencies comes up against something in their life where they feel like they don't have the autonomy to be who they are, and they are not able, they feel like their freedom and their ability to choose is being messed with, they'll be resistant. Okay, so let's say you're in a job that expects you to act in a certain way, and you're just not like that. That a lot of people will say, you know, the job was good, it was the environment. It could be the way a supervisor was. It could be the way the people around you, if you're an upholder and the supervisor never gave you any structure, you'd be very frustrated. And you would see that as a problem with your own ability to choose and be, because it doesn't give you the structure you need. The happiest and most successful people are those who have figured out ways to exploit their tendencies to their benefit and found ways to counterbalance their limitations. Okay? So, what are we thinking? Do we need to review any of these? I really like to have more conversation about the tendencies if we can. I'm going to stop sharing and see if we can have more conversation about the tendencies and see how you feel about it.
So when you were saying obliger, what's that word?
Obliger.
Obliger.
I'm obliged to you.
Obliger.
Obliger.
Okay. Me and Mother Trout used to go walking 2 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
God wasn't even up this early in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So the only reason I did this was because I love my cousin. I didn't even say Mother Trout, okay? This was my cousin getting me out the bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be doing that, okay? But I wanted to do this for her. So I did it 2 times, and I was like, please let her call and say she canceled. Please let her call and say she cancels. But that was rare.
So here's the thing. You're not an obliger in that instance.
I'm not?
She needed you to keep her accountable.
Oh.
See, she needed that external, which is you, to keep her accountable to go. So she was using you. The problem is you don't want to go. Now, if you were equally an obliger, then you'd be like, great, we're keeping each other accountable. Now, Marcia, where do you see yourself fitting?
I thought I was an obliger, but I guess I'm not. I could be. Go back to. Can't go back to the screen? Let me hear. I got it in my book. Hold on.
Rebel.
I am not a rebel.
I can share it. It's upholder, questioner, obliger, and rebel.
Okay, so
I
could not. When I was reading this, I could not pick myself out.
I would almost say.
I think she has a classic combination.
I think she's one of the people who kind of is a obliger.
I still can't pick myself out.
Well, and they talked about it that a questioner obligers can blend, crossover. She talks about it in the book. Those two, not only are they more common, but they have a tendency to bump into each other. So I would say that in certain situations, you are very much a questioner, because if you don't have a good reason to do it, you ain't doing it.
Exactly.
But in the situation of,
yeah, I can see that.
Okay, so in the situation of exercising, you do fine by yourself, because you can because you see the value. You have that internal expectation that you have for yourself, and you see the value to it, and you're fine with that because you have logically sorted out, I am healthier, I feel better, I have these benefits from exercising. The thing with Mother Trout was she was trying to use you as her external person for accountability, and that's not who you are.
Okay, now I see it. Now I see I'm like more of a questioner.
But see, you're a obliger because, like, you generally, if you get said,
I think it depends on the person.
Who's asking?
Marsha's like that about an obliger especially for her mother.
Oh yeah.
And her family, period. So that's where that comes in. But she's definitely a questioner because outside of her family, She questions, why are we doing this? I mean, you think about
That is so true.
everything with
See,
like,
and half the time when I hear you ask questions, you're pulling them right out of my head. I mean,
Immediate
hurt
family,
my
not
feelings.
extended.
That hurt my feelings that she did not want to go, and that she was praying that I would cancel. That hurt my feelings.
now, but here's the thing. Now, if you set it up to do with G, you two would hold each other accountable
Mm-hmm.
in my work. So you got to find the
See?
right. That's what you got. So you not only got to know who you are, but you got to know who you're tapping. Like, are they externally motivated by expectations or internally motivated by expectations? And how does that work? And you are relying on someone who is like, I'm not. A questioner, I think, really has. That's who I identify that I am, and I don't really. I mean, I have, yes, I do have like external accountability. That's fine, yeah, but it's more about my own accountability. How do I internally justify? How do I justify anything, doing anything?
So, Marsha, the reason that you still went on and did it, it wasn't only because you love me, but you were also benefiting from that. So, what am I going to get out of it? And that is why you went ahead and did it.
So there was a part of her that said there is a health benefit. It was just so dadgum early in the morning, she didn't like it.
Don't want her to stop.
and I
See,
say she's the questioner because I have learned that anytime I need something from Elder Marcia, that I have to have all of my explanations, all of my reasonings, all of my whatever, in order to make whatever it is happen. I have to give her all of the ducks.
and I
But
know
Marsha is a what is that? What was that top one?
upholder.
Marsha is an upholder
Well, here's the thing.
for
Here's
sure.
Here's the thing. I know it sounds funny that we would have just 4 categories to put ourselves in. Well, depending on any theory that you have, there's different theories about your personality and all of this. I mean, and this woman is just taking one little piece about that relates to forming better habits, or how do you form habits? What are your motivations? Where are the expectations coming from? What makes it easier for me? What makes it harder? So she broke it down into 4. That doesn't mean that other things don't come into play. You know, that doesn't mean that, like G said, he's, one thing on the job and maybe something a little bit different at home. I think we all know that in a work environment, we might be a little bit different. I have always been a questioner. Why? And it has gotten on everybody's last nerve, no matter where I work, because they'll say, well, because they think I'm questioning them and not the process or whatever. And my whole thing is I need to justify the reason. What's the reason? And once I can get it in my head that something makes sense, then okay, we're good. But I'm not doubting anybody. I just need it for my own motivation. Now, I will do things that I'm not motivated to do, but like Elder Marcia, I'll be like, please don't make me do that. Please don't make me do what I don't want to do. Because I'm not getting the motivation from where I want to.
Will you come walk with me, Elder Cindy?
No. That I can tell you. I mean, I've done it before where other people keep you accountable, and I get all that. But I get then if somebody like flakes out, I get mad. Because why did I do it and you didn't? And you could have pneumonia and I'd be mad. Like, I'm not kidding. Yeah. Like if I make a commitment, yeah.
I was just gonna say I have learned that about you in the last 8 years too. That if we say that we're gonna do something, I have to make sure that we follow through because she gonna get mad if we don't.
Well, and I temper that because I know it's me, not you. You know what I'm saying? I temper that. I've learned over the years that I'll get over it. I mean, if you say you're going to do something and then and there's a reason why it happened, well, okay, I'll get over it. But I also just feel like people, if you, because there are times I don't want to do something, so I get that. Then just say so. Don't flake and just not show up like that.
Right.
Like who does that? You know, I, it's all about communication as far as I'm concerned, because then I can reason it out because there's people communicating with me. But it's the don't flake on me because I don't know what just happened. Um, there's no logic to that for me, you know. And over the years, I think as you start to learn a little bit about yourself. How do I best get over some things? Yeah. And some things aren't worth the trouble of being mad about. I may act mad, but I'm not really. So, Pastor, what do you? You're muted, and your spouse has already thought he knows who you.
I think that I am absolutely a questioner.
With a little bit of rebel.
I rebel against any outside expectations. Because I think that I've lived my life enough with trying to live under other people's expectations. And so I'm quite opposed. But I don't do it just to rebel, which is why I like the description that you gave about it. I really do question and wonder why. And once those questions are answered, I'm cool. So yeah.
But you do approach things in your own way, and when I was I mean, when you start to think about, if you just sit and consider, well, let's see, who does this sound like? And who does, even your family members. And you think about the different personalities in your families and you're like, But see, and what I saw was when first she said he's an obliger, there was that little bit of rebel that comes from pastor that makes your relationship work on that level, because you let him be his little rebel and you take care of things.
Wait, did he say that? Did you say that Damien said he was an obliger?
Yeah. But I think he's an obliger in a work environment because he thinks because it's all about the external. But honestly, he's
Well,
a
then what do you
blend.
think I am?
I think you're a blend.
I know that I am, but I guess like my everyday, so my push from what you described about the obliger was, my push every day is to try to get everything to function properly. Like I'm an operations manager, so
You're
it's
an
always
upholder.
Yeah. So it's always about trying to
What
make
are the
everything.
rules?
Yeah, follow the rules, make everything happen. All of the clocks are turning, all the gears are working, so that we don't have catastrophe.
But it's all about the rules. What are the rules? And we must follow the rules, and there's that obliger part, but I think you're more of a upholder, because this is the way it should be.
I think he's an upholder too.
These are the rules in life. Here's the rules in life.
Yeah, I'll give you
These
that.
are the rules. And I think that's where when you say you're OCD and something makes you a little crazy, that's the upholder. That my circles weren't quite right. And
but
I know
like with Marsha, it depends on who it is. Because with me, he's a questioner, but with the world, he's an upholder.
See, and I think that like the reason they're called tendencies is that you're not locked in to saying I'm never anything, because sometimes we've all been a rebel. Like, I'm done. I'm going to do it my way. and the rest of you can all go jump off a cliff. I mean, we've all done that and said, I don't know who came up with this way to do this, but, you know, uh, or you get into a work situation where you have to be creative with something and everybody's running into a brick wall and you're like, just let me do it and don't ask any questions, And see, and I think that's part of it, because we all get to that point where like, just let me do it. Don't ask questions. Just let me do it. So I don't think that we all are pure anything, but I really think that we do have like a strong tendency. And she just says over and over again, embrace it, because it is what it is. You can't change it because it's who you are. She pulled some of this from Freud, who called them fatal tendencies, but she thought it sounded negative. But what he was talking about is, and Freud has a tendency to be a little negative, but what he's talking about is this is just who you are. It's who you are. And it's not a good or bad thing. It's just who you are. And if you understand who you are, then you understand what's motivating you. Then when we start talking about how do you formulate different habits and things in your life, you're going to say, okay, well, then my better approach would be, Mother Trout, having someone walk with me. Now, the key to the problem with walking with you is I would walk with you, but there's a couple problems here. One, too early in the morning. Two, you live too far away. So you put those things together, there's no logic in there for me. If we were neighbors, you and I'd go walking, because that would make sense to me.
Even with the time?
Well, I wouldn't have to travel because we're neighbors.
Right. Okay.
Like if you were my next door neighbor, right? Then the logic is there. Yeah, I could go out first thing in the morning with you, and then you would have that external motivation. Well, Cindy's going to be there, so I have to be there. But the problem is, and that's probably part of the issue with Marcia, the problem is she couldn't find the logic in it. Because one, it was too early in the morning, and two, she had to travel to get to you, right?
Well, we traveled about the same distance to get to where we were going.
But still,
it was like the same distance. So the distance wasn't the problem, because where she was coming from, where I was coming from, it was the same. What is the same distance, Marcia? Yeah, same distance. Marcia just lazy, and she didn't want to get up.
It was o'clock dirty. Dirty. That's what time in the morning it was.
Dark 30.
Dark 30. There you
it
go.
was dark 30.
Dark
But
30.
see, and for a questioner, there's no logic in that unless I can step out the door and you're right there. Because if you were my next door neighbor, Mother Trout, then and if you live right next door to Marcia, you might even be able to convince her. But you can't, if you're dealing with a person who's going with logic, no.
Now, do you think a younger let's do our tendencies like evolve, maybe, if from when we're younger? Maybe when you're younger, you're more of a rebel. The world can do what it wants to do. And then
she didn't talk other way. Yeah, she didn't talk much about that, but I would say you are who you are, because take a look at the three girls. We got three little girls. They're all about the same age, and they're all very different because that's who they are. And you may, like, children have a rebellious streak, I guess, teenagers do, whatever. They try out things, whatever, but they have a way of relating to the world and expectations in their life and what they expect from themselves internally and externally, what those expectations are. And if you look at the three little ones, they all seem to relate differently. And it's just who they are. I think what happens is, Marcia, you you kind of get into your own, maybe a little, settled into who you are, that there might be a little bit of more overlap when you're younger, as you're trying out things. But according to her, to the author, no, she's like, this is who you are. It's part of your personality,
Maybe as you get older, like like you said, you kind of probably settle into more of who you are
Uh-huh.
because you're already who you are. But probably when you're younger, when you're younger, you get influenced and you do things that's not really you. But
Mm-hmm.
like when you get older, you're like, what a fool I was. I know better, and I wish somebody would ask me to do that now.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, because you're like, whatever. you know.
Yep. Well, we have not heard from Ellis. Mr. Ellis.
Oh, I'm still here.
I
I'm
know,
trying
but
to.
where
I'm
where would
trying
you
to
put
think what
yourself?
I know. I'm listening to all y'all, and I still don't know where I fit. I would say I'm probably a mix of the questioner and the reveler, or the one that read. So I don't know, but I don't know. And I'm trying to see how I fit because I'm thinking of how you all describe it yourselves
Uh-huh.
uh, as well, especially Pastor and G. I'm like, does that? So is that really them? And it's still no. I don't know. Maybe it's like people can be a blend too,
You
mostly
can't, yeah.
depending
You
on the situation. Because you all have made good points where, and then giving good examples,
mm-hmm.
to where how that can shift
Mm-hmm.
depending on the situation, where you're at, who you're dealing with. Um, so yeah, but I was like Marsha at first. I was like, I don't know what I am. I was like really confused on it. And then as everybody starts talking everything out, I guess I'm more of a reveler and a questioner.
Well,
I do like, yeah, I do like to know why things are, if we're doing something, or if I'm told to do something, or it's like but like I said, it still just depends on the situation,
mm-hmm.
because I'm not so much of a questioner where. So here's the thing, like for example with Pastor, he's very, and I love this about him. He's very pro. Hey, don't take my word for it. Just you don't take my word for it. Research and study for your own. But I'm the type of person that if I have faith in somebody or respect in somebody, I'm not gonna question it. You know what I'm saying? Although it's good to study on your own, if I have confidence in the person, I won't question why things like that. So I guess, like I say, I'm a blend, maybe because it just depends on the situation, the person. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think you have a stronger tendency. It's just, I mean, I think you would have a stronger tendency. Um, it's just you're having trouble identifying it because you're relating it to. I'd almost put you as an obliger, questioner, both of those two, because I think you're a little of those two, um, because of the external uh, connection, whereas the rebel doesn't have that external connection so much. But I'm going to ask a question. Would it help? And I'm going to ask all of you, but I think Ellis is what brought it to my mind. Would it help if I gave a handout with a little bit of an explanation of each of them so you could kind of review them over the week before next
Yes.
week? Okay, I'll do
Yeah.
that. Because I think it's hard. I know I'm putting people on the spot, and Ellis, I did put you on the spot. But I think you have to kind of chew on it a little bit.
No, you didn't put me on the spot, really. It's just, not because I really was thinking about. I was like, I don't know what I am. You know what I'm saying? So
Well,
I was
and
like,
it's like, what can I relate to? How can I relate to this, and really feel like I understand who I am, and it's you know, Elder Marcia's had trouble. So it's okay. I will send some of that out. Terrell, how are you doing?
Yes, I think I am, like you said, a mix between the obliger and the questioner, in regard to, because I'm very particular in regard to like the specifics. I get lost in the details sometimes, and I like to make sure that everything follows in a certain order, and then also um, in regard to being an obliger, sometimes I'm Elizabeth hesitant to tell people no. I kind of hesitate when it comes to hurting somebody's feelings. For example, I go along with people for a while, and then and I guess I look for an exit, a reason to say no or to not do it, but yeah, I think that's those are my two. I think.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And I know, G, that your OCD was crazy when the sanctuary was flipped.
Mm.
Did you see it backwards?
Yes, that's why
Is it fixed now?
Yes.
It was right on my computer, but it was showing backwards on you all's.
But that's how it happens, though, is that, when it
What?
comes to other,
What's that?
I
It
didn't
was
notice either.
he just fixed it. It was when he stood up and I went, it's backwards.
because I just sent him a text message. I say, okay, do you know that the logo is
Is it backward now?
No, it's fine
No,
now.
it's correct.
So
Boy,
it's
I
only
did not
showing
notice.
on my computer. That's odd.
No, that's the way it
What
happens.
me?
Everything. Cell phones are the same way. When you do video, it reverts. So anytime
It'll
that you
reverse
do
it.
it,
Yeah.
yeah,
Am
it's
I not observing it?
I didn't catch it till he stood up. So
I didn't
Well-
catch it then. I just looked at the chair when he got up. That's all I noticed.
well, that's it for tonight. And I know that was I mean, when you start looking at who you are and how do I fit and who it's a lot. And that's why I kind of wanted to keep this one kind of something we could talk about and kind of process with each other, because it's like, where do I fit? And it's not like with some personality tests, you literally take a test and it tells you. This is pick a spot. And most of us are having issue with, I'm just not one thing. And that's true. But you do have a tendency toward something, and I will kind of summarize each of I have a kind of an outline with each of them summarized a little bit. So you can kind of read through them and just kind of get to know who you are, but also look at who are people at the sanctuary, who are people that you work with, who are people in your family, because you're going to hopefully be able to see a better way of interacting with people and knowing how you can assist them. And that's the key. She talks about how can you better help someone else or work with someone if you are working with them and know how to relate best to them. So I think that's important. I really do. Because I mean, we all want to relate to each other and all of that. So